This is weird. It's quiet in here. Was that strange? Yeah. Can anyone take a guess as to how long it was quiet in here? One minute. 1 minute was all it took for things to get weird. So if that's any indication of how things are going to go today, we're going to get awfully weird. But it's a good lead-in to what we're going to be talking about today, of this relationship and this spiritual discipline of silence and solitude with God. And so before we get started, many of you might be wondering, who is this guy up here staring at me? I will tell you one thing, it is a lot more awkward for me having all of you staring at me. But my name is Alex Hurd. I've been here at Connection Christian Church for many years. When my wife and my family, when we moved to Columbus, this was the first church we went to. It's the only church we've been to. And when we moved here, we made some pretty big life decisions, pretty big God decisions. And we were both baptized here. And eventually we dedicated all of our children to be raised in a God-fearing home here. And so Connection is a pretty special place to me and my family. And so when Mike, comes to me and says, "Hey, will you stand up in front of these guys and talk?" There's a level of gratitude that says, "Sure, I will," even if, this is not what I do. I am a teacher. I'm not a preacher. And so my prayer for today is that, A, you'll give me a little bit of grace, and B, that, you can find something in my ramblings to take and apply to your own life. And so what I wanted to get started with this morning is this quote that I found as I'm preparing for today, and it says, "In a world addicted to noise, choosing silence is a radical trust in God." Just last week I got back from camp. I went to YFFC camp. We took 30 campers out to Niobrara. We ride on a school bus, and that's loud, right? I get home, I think, okay, it's time for some peace. We're going on vacation, so I load up the family, and we get in the van, and we drive 3 hours to Des Moines with a 3-year-old, 5-year-old, 11-year-old. Still pretty loud, okay? And so I've had a loud week and a half here. And while I was at camp, I was thinking about, I'm looking around and I see these kids, and they've got their cell phones and they got their tablets, and they have all these things that distract them and take their attention and their time. And it's like, as you're getting older, it's easy to be like, get off my lawn and get off that tablet and spend some time outside and do all these things. But I have to remember to give these kids grace as we want it as well, because what they are living in is the loudest possible time ever, right? They are in the loudest world ever right now. There's constant noise, right? Technology. I know there's parents out here that are struggling with the technology, the cell phones, the screen time of whatever it is, computers, iPads, everything. There's these struggles that come with technology, and it's a blessing and a curse, right? It's things that we love having, and we love having that instant access to whatever, but there's that struggle that comes with it too, because kids' ears are constantly filled with something. But then when we put ourselves in the equation too, we have life's busyness, right? Those kids that are struggling with all of that, we're running them around and doing all these things, and on top of all that, our bills still got to get paid, and we got to go to work, and we have all these obligations, and there's just stuff, right? There's stuff that we have to do, and the accessibility to the noise gets easier every single day. It's like every time you turn around, they've created something new that makes it easier to access whatever it is that you want, you know? I know in the room there's some other teachers, and so they battle this, the earbuds, especially the girls, right? Because we came up with this solid plan where we're going to get these phones out of kids' hands, and we're going to have them put their phones in the phone sleeves, and that's great. But when you have these wireless earbuds, and they put it in the phone, and they cover their ear where their earbud's at, and they just continue to listen to this stuff that's drawing attention from everything that they should be doing, right? But it doesn't stop there, right? The cell phone is one, the earbuds, I need my kids to be quiet in the car, I'm going to put on a movie. There was no movies in cars when I was growing up, and I'm not that old. But also, like, the internet, it's everywhere, right? And so the accessibility and the noise in our world, all these things that we have going on, we use them all the time as excuses for not spending time with God. And here's the biggest one, right? How am I supposed to spend time alone with God? I'm way too busy. How can I find time for it? How can I do it? Okay? Why would I? Right? It's another excuse we see. Why would I spend time alone with a God who would let this happen or that happen? Have you seen what's going on here? Why am I going to make time for a God who would allow something like that to happen? Another excuse that we make. And here's a big one that I see with kids a lot. I need the noise to focus. I need it to focus. It helps me relax. I can't do that without it. It's constant, right? But the biggest one is that busyness, right? We're busy. We got things to do, okay? How am I supposed to find this time to spend with God? But what I will tell you, if you really dive into the Bible, Jesus was busy too, right? Jesus was busy. When we look at Mark chapter 1, verse 29 through 31, okay? Jesus spends his entire day healing the sick, casting out demons, from sun up to sundown. He's busy. And the next day, he knows that he is walking to Galilee, okay? He's not hopping a flight. He's not getting in his car. He is walking his way to Galilee, and he is planning to preach the entire day, okay? That sound busy? But in Mark chapter 1, verse 35, it says, "In rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed." So in all of his busyness, Jesus prioritizes his relationship with God and snuck off to spend time with him, right? Everyone else is still sleeping. His disciples that are coming along with him, they're in bed, and they haven't done half the work that Jesus has, and yet he finds the time. See, we've began to view this relationship a little bit backwards, right? We have created a world where rest comes in the form of mindless scrolling, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is, playing video games, or having a beer with friends at the end of a long day. And I get it, right? And this is where that grace piece comes in, because social medias and your phones, they have you figured out, right? They have you figured out. How many people in this room have been talking about something, anything, and then they log into their Facebook and they see an ad for that exact thing? I was thinking about how I need this new vacuum cleaner. It's going to solve a lot of problems for me, and then here it is popping up in my news feed. it happens all the time, and they figure out the algorithm to give you everything that you think you need, your For You page or whatever it is on social media. Okay, the algorithms and the social media people, they have you figured out. And I'll tell you what, I'm standing up here, but that doesn't mean that I'm guilt-free, okay? I have fallen into these traps as well, okay? There have been times in my life where I would be so ashamed if someone asked to see the stats of how much time I've spent on each app for the day, right? You can find on your phone how much time exactly every single day that you've spent on whatever app or whatever thing it is, okay? You can find it. And I tell you what, I would be embarrassed, right? I've been really embarrassed about the amount of times that Netflix has asked me, "Are you still watching?" Yes, I'm still watching. Leave me alone. And my wife would certainly be ashamed if she saw the amount of time I spend watching golf videos on YouTube. It's a problem, right? Okay? And I say this because if you've found yourself in this boat where Netflix is bugging you, are you still watching? Okay? Or if you're setting those goals, those wellness goals on your phone where I'm only going to spend so much screen time a day, but then you keep shutting those goals off, it's probably time for you to evaluate your relationship with God and where you're spending that time. Because what we have to understand is that God meets us in stillness. He doesn't meet us in chaos, right? Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." Be still? How hard is that? We went 1 minute and people were looking around like, what is happening up here? 1 minute is all it took for us to be like, what is going on? Okay? Be still and know that I am God, right? And that be still part is the hardest. Because no matter what, there's always something that is tugging at you, right? There is something that always wants your time and your attention, whether it's work, kids, relationships, work, kids, and relationships, okay? Whatever it is, whatever your thing is that's pulling your time and attention, it's always there, right? And still, God is asking us to be still. And it makes us uncomfortable, right? We saw that. If you find yourself face to face with somebody else and no one is talking, what happens? We try to fill that space with something, okay? We try to fill that space with either mindless conversation, how are you, what's up, what have you been up to, how's the weather? The weather's a big one here in Nebraska, okay? There's always something to talk about there, okay? But we search for words to fill that silence because it is uncomfortable. That silence gets to be really loud, right? And something else that silence does is it brings to the surface and it brings us face to face with some of the things that are weighing on us, right? Your restlessness, your anxieties, any unresolved wounds or trauma that you've had in your life, and our need for control. This is a big one, okay? So in one of my classes that I'm taking right now, it talks about this river of well-being, okay? Well-being sounds good, right? It's where we want to be, okay? But in every river, there's banks, okay? And we have this one bank on the right and this bank on the left, and one is rigidity, where we feel like we have got to have everything in control. Everything that we do is by us, designed by us, and we are in control of it, right? And this other bank is the opposite. We call this bank chaos, okay? And in chaos, we have no control at all, right? We feel like there's nothing that we can do. Everything is not working. We have no control, and we have lost it, okay? And every single one of us throughout our life, we spend some time kind of going back and forth, right? We spend maybe a little bit of time creeping close to rigidity, and then we spend a little bit of time over here in chaos, maybe not as much time as we want in well-being, okay? But we are constantly floating back and forth, okay? And what we find is that our relationship with God is what keeps us centered, right? It's what keeps us in that river of well-being, okay? Because what we acknowledge in that closeness to God is that it doesn't matter because we don't have any control, okay? We are not in control of any of it. No matter how much we strive for it, God is all-powerful, and he is the one that is in control, right? If we're in chaos and we don't have control over anything, we can cast our worries on him, as it says in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. If we're too rigid, God can soften our hearts. But we have to be still, okay? Because what the noise in our lives does is it numbs us and distracts us from the things that God wants to heal in our lives. You guys got it figured out? Yeah. Because like I said, getting away from the noise and creating an environment of silence and solitude is hard, okay? First reason why is because the temptation and the accessibility is too much, right? We talked about this, right? Phones, TVs, computers, they're so easily accessible, and when we're faced with the decision, we get this decision all the time, okay? What do? Do we spend time with God, or do we take that time for ourselves? What do? We are faced with that decision every single day. And I can tell you, I make the wrong one a lot, okay? And part of that is because we see these like really catchy slogans and these taglines that say, fill your cup first, brother, okay? And put on your life jacket first before you help anybody else, okay? But all of these things are distractions, right? And what they do is they validate our desire to engage with everything else but Jesus, okay? Because it's work. And the second reason why creating that environment of silence and solitude is hard is because of you guys. People, okay? They're everywhere. They are everywhere. They always need something from you. They never show up to give you anything awesome. And sometimes they make being a Christian really challenging. But really, the people in our lives are the ones that drain our biblical battery the most. And the biggest reason that we see is time, right? There's 24 hours in a day, okay? My kids, they normally wake me up, and in the morning, already, you'd think, hey, they've got the rest, whatever it is. But they are needy from the beginning, okay? They are needy from the minute they get up, and they don't get any less needy throughout the day, okay? And so, another thing is that summertime bedtime, right? I know some parents are struggling with this maybe a little bit. It is a disaster, okay? And so by the time you actually have that time to make that choice, right? Time with God or myself, you are dead, okay? You are drained. And it is TikTok o'clock or whatever it is that you really like, okay? That is what is taking precedence, okay? But I think one thing that we can agree on is that time is something that there just never seems to be enough of, right? There's never enough time to get everything done that we need to do in a day and still fill our cup first, okay? So how do we do it? What do? I don't know. I've spent a lot of time groping and complaining and telling you all the things that get in the way. What are we supposed to do? One of the things I want to remind you is that if you've been a part of the church long enough, I'm sure you've heard this, but because you believe in God and you follow after Jesus and you desire that relationship, it doesn't mean that things are going to be easy, right? And this is something, creating that space and that time for silence and solitude with God, it takes practice, right? Anytime you want to get good at anything, what do we tell kids to do? Well, you got to practice more, okay? Well, we need to practice more, okay? And this is something that Jesus practiced often, right? So if we look in Luke chapter 5, verse 16, it says, "But he would withdraw to desolate places and pray." Matthew chapter 14, verse 23 says, "And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. And when evening came, he was there alone." Luke chapter 6, verse 12, "In these days he went out to the mountain to pray, and all night he continued in prayer to God." So how do we do it? We follow after Jesus, guys. Jesus made time for it. That's our first step, right? Prioritize that time. But we need to set a time and a place, right? Here's some good news, okay? I've said it's hard. I've said there's all these things that get in the way. Here's some good news. You don't need a mountain, okay? You don't need to find a mountain, and you do not have to pray all night long, okay? You don't have to do that. Okay, but what you need to do is you need to analyze your schedule and look at where and when you can make it work. Okay, set a time and a place. But here's the thing, start small. Okay, start small. We see failed goals a lot, right? I set 27 New Year's resolutions. They're all on my phone. How many people in here think that I'm going to make all 27 of those? Don Ortman, ever the optimist, okay? Hey, I love you, brother, but you are way wrong. Okay, it's June, and I am cooked, okay? I am done. It's not going to happen, okay? Because what I did while I was leading up to this is I analyzed those, and I said, whoa, why did you set that goal? It's too much, right? And some of them you would think, oh, well, you should be able to do that, right? One of the goals that I am going to fail, and it's June, right? Okay, there's a lot of year left, but I'm going to fail it. I set a goal to read the Bible every single day. 365 days out of 365 days, okay? And I'm standing up here talking to you, and I'm telling you, I failed that goal, okay? It's too much, all right? But you have to start small. Set yourself up for success first, okay? Think about this. Find 1 minute a day, right? We found it already. It was weird, but we got it, okay? But find that 1 minute a day, okay? And after 1 week, you will have spent 7 minutes alone in silence with God. Multiply that times 4. In 1 month, you would have spent 28. I'm not going to keep doing the math because you don't want me to, but if you think about 1 minute a day over a year, it's 365 minutes that you spent in silence, alone with God, that you didn't have before. And all you did was create 1 minute. Okay? Is that small enough? 1 minute? Okay? And then once you've set a consistent routine and you've gotten into a rhythm, then you can start adding. Okay? But something else that you can do that is really helpful, okay, is find someone or something that you can be accountable to. Okay? I know it's ironic for me to ask you to spend time alone with God with somebody else, but it's much easier to reach goals if your success depends not only on your own personal growth, but the fact that you don't want to let anyone else down, right? That human nature that says, I don't want them to think less of me, or I don't want to let them down. So find someone that you can be accountable, because not only that, but they are going to encourage you when you are struggling to stay in it, and they will be there to call you out on your stuff when those excuses start to pop up, right? Because as much as we have this desire to spend some time alone in silence with God, all that noise that we talked about before, it doesn't just magically disappear, right? Okay, there's still stuff tugging at us all of the time. Okay? And the last thing that you can do is turn down the volume. Okay? And this is tough. Shut the TV off. Okay? Turn the music off. Get your phone put away, okay? I understand the ease of using the Bible app on your phone. Okay? Instead of flipping through pages, I just go ding, ding, ding. And I can find everything that I'm looking for really quickly, okay? But how easy is it for you to study your Bible, but I'm just going to spend 1 minute, I'm going to check that score of that game, I'm going to see how things are going. And then something else from there catches our attention, and then all of a sudden, 20 minutes later, we were back at our Bible saying, where were we at? Okay? Or your phone rings, or you get a notification from Facebook, or whatever it is. It's so simple and easy and tempting to get out of your Bible when you do it that way, okay? So put the phones away and get out an actual Bible that you have to turn the pages on, okay? Those are some things that we can do to emulate Jesus. Now, we've spent time talking about the barriers that interfere with our ability to spend time in silence and solitude with God, and how you can overcome them. But a question that I am hearing a lot with my boys these days is, why? Right? I have a 3-year-old, 5-year-old. Why is like one of the biggest words in their vocabulary. Why should we do it? Okay? Especially if we're in a good place, okay? If we are in a good place, things are going well, and we haven't created that time and space for God, why should we? Or if we're in a bad place and things aren't going well and we've tried that praying thing and it's just not working out and God's not listening and God doesn't hear me, okay, why would I start now? Why? Here's what we need to understand is that this silence and solitude, it creates the space we need to actually hear God. Because when God's talking, one of two things is normally happening, right? This is where human nature comes in, right? We are not getting the answer that we want, and so we're not listening, right? Maybe we've been praying for something and God is pushing us in a different direction. I said, God, I'm not going to listen to that because it's not what I want, and so that time is meaningless. Or what also happens is that everything in our life is too loud for us to hear it, right? What's getting our time and attention are all those things that are distracting us and pulling us away, the enemy's work trying to keep us from our relationship with God. But when we take that time and we dedicate and commit to spending time in silence and solitude with God, we are able to create that space for us to actually hear it. And it also exposes the heart, right? When you are face to face with God and all by yourself, there is absolutely no hiding, right? There's a quote that says, "Be your naked self before God and be found in him." So in this space, you grow closer to God by sharing your thoughts, your feelings, your fears, your flaws, and all the imperfections to a God that no matter what you share with him, loves you anyways, right? He loves you with grace and mercy, and what a relief it can be to get all of that off of here, okay? How refreshing can it be to take all of the burdens that you've been carrying and cast them onto a God who wants to do well with you? Psalm chapter 62, verse 1 says, "Truly my soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from him." Guys, we don't find rest in TikTok or Snapchat, and we won't find heaven through relationship with the remote or the radio. Rest in our eternal resting place comes through relationship with God. And then there's other benefits that we have too, just in our day-to-day life, okay? Committing to this time of silence and solitude with God is going to help you to be present and loving in your relationships because you're practicing it all the time with God, okay? My wife is sitting up here, okay? I can tell you that there's been many times where she has been talking to me and she's saying, "Are you hearing me? Are you listening?" I was not. But when you spend that time practicing with God, you're able to do that more frequently in the relationships that really matter to you because you've already practiced the skill of being present and listening with God. And so you also stop reacting and start responding with grace because what you've done is you've practiced the art of shutting up, okay? You've practiced the art of being quiet, and so what you can do is you can actually take in information and process it and build a response that is built with grace and love and mercy, and it's not just walls going up to defend yourself from whatever it is that's happening, and I can see, I'm trying not to look because my wife is... But this is something that you get to practice with God all the time, okay? And lastly, you are going to be filled with some stability and peace that you have never felt before. And what you can do with that is you can lead and you can minister to others well to carry on the mission of Jesus Christ to seek and save the lost, okay? That peace and that stability gives you the mindset to be able to do that. But also, okay, everyone's experience with silence and solitude with God is going to look a little bit different, right? Everyone's season of life, where they're at, it's different, and what they have to offer is different, okay? So here's what I can't give you, okay? I cannot hand you the playbook and say, here's what you do, okay? Go and be silent, hang out with God by yourself. I can't do that, right? But what I can give you, okay, are some suggestions, okay? And here's what I would suggest that you do with this time with God, right? And the first thing, this is like a buzzword with school counselors, okay, but I'm going to use it. Practice mindfulness, okay? Be mindful of your thoughts and your feelings without judgment, right? We have a really bad habit of taking, of being our own worst critic, right? We take states and we make them into traits, or we take feelings and we identify them and make them who we are, okay? But you need to be mindful of doing that, okay? Because God loves us no matter who we are and what we're struggling with, okay? And he wants to hear those, okay? And we don't have the capacity to judge ourselves, right? There's one person that is ever going to do that. So all we need to do is be open and honest and mindful and true to how we are feeling and what we are thinking without identifying them as who we are. But also in that time, pray and meditate, right? Reflect on Scripture or simply put your mind at ease and be present, okay? Present in the presence of God. And lastly, don't be afraid to experiment, okay? Try things that work for you. And if they don't, try something else, okay? I guarantee if you say, I'm going to get up every day at 6 a.m. and you oversleep one day, it's fine, okay? Maybe that's not the time for you. You've learned something from that. 6 a.m. is not the time for me. What do I need to try next? Okay? But don't be afraid to experiment with whatever that process is going to look like for you, okay? But with that experimentation, I'll tell you a few things, okay? Like our minute that we spent together this morning, okay? It might be a little awkward at first, okay? You might be a little bit uncomfortable, okay? And this is going to take a little bit of time for you to develop a consistent rhythm and routine that works for you, okay? All good things take time. And I will tell you that it'll probably be hard. Not just hard to do, but that time can be hard too because of what may or may not be revealed to you during your time of silence and solitude with God. Okay? That isn't meant to scare you away because what I will tell you, all those things may happen. But what will definitely happen is that the time that you spent will be worth it. Okay? So I'm going to leave you with 3 questions. All right? First off, what is the biggest barrier getting in the way of you spending time alone with God? What do you need to say no to create space in your life for time alone with God? And what are you most afraid of being revealed by going face to face with God alone? What are you most afraid of? My last quote here I'm going to leave you with is in Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 28 says, "But the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him." We're going to take some time and just be silent in the presence of God.